Sometimes the biggest stories in tech are also the most confusing, right? You'll see one headline saying a company has never been stronger, and then the next one suggests its entire future is at risk. Well, today, we're going to untangle one of the biggest paradoxes out there, the story of Apple's trillion-dollar problem with AI. Okay, so let's just dive right in. On the surface, things look absolutely incredible for Apple. In the first quarter of 2026, the company pulled in, get this, a record-breaking $143.8 billion in revenue. This wasn't just a good quarter, it was a monster success. And it was pretty much all driven by the launch of the new iPhone 17. And look, Apple's CEO, Tim Cook, he wasn't exactly subtle about it. He called the demand staggering. Now, for any investors who were getting a little nervous that maybe hardware sales were slowing down, this was music to their ears. So you've got a record quarter, a phone that's flying off the shelves. Everything points to a company at the absolute peak of its power. But that's not the whole story. And that brings us to the paradox, the big question. If Apple is crushing it, if its ecosystem is this impenetrable fortress, then why did it just sign a deal that puts its biggest rival, Google, right at the very heart of its future? That's the mystery we are unpacking. So what happened was, back in January of 2026, Apple and Google, these two huge rivals, announced a landmark partnership. The deal basically says that Google's Gemini AI models and its massive cloud infrastructure will be the engine for Apple's next generation of Apple Intelligence. We're talking a complete rebuild of Siri from the ground up. This is a massive, massive deal, and it happened for a very good reason. So why on earth would Apple do this? Well, the truth is, behind those shiny new iPhones, Apple has been really struggling with the whole AI transition. For a while now, analysts have been talking about an AI execution risk at the company. Let's be honest, Siri has been falling behind competitors for years, and a lot of the cool AI features they promised just kept getting delayed. Building these top-tier AI models from scratch it's an immense challenge. It is unbelievably expensive and complex, and Apple clearly decided it couldn't afford to wait anymore. Okay, but here's where it gets really complicated. This alliance of rivals comes with a huge catch. Government regulators are looking at this new AI deal and seeing giant antitrust red flags. And why is that? Because this whole setup looks almost identical to the very case that just branded Google a monopolist in the search market. It's like déjà vu. To really get why regulators are so worried, you need to understand this one key idea that came out of that case. It's called the flywheel effect. The court basically found that Google used its power to create this unstoppable, self-reinforcing cycle. Its dominance got it more data, that data made its product better, and that better product locked in its dominance. It's a feedback loop that pretty much just chokes out all the competition. Let's break it down. It works like this. Step 1. You get your product to be the default choice on a huge platform. Like Google search on the iPhone. Step 2. Suddenly you have access to way more user data than anybody else on the planet. Step 3. You use that fire hose of data to make your product smarter and better, faster than any rival possibly could. And then, step 4, that superior product makes it a total no-brainer to keep you as the default, which, of course, starts the whole wheel spinning all over again. Regulators are terrified this exact same cycle is about to kick off with AI. Now, of course, Apple and Google are going to tell you, hey, this deal isn't exclusive. But regulators, they know better. They know that in our digital world, the default setting is incredibly sticky. I mean, think about it. Most people just never bother to change it. So by making Gemini the default AI on over 2 billion active Apple devices, it could pretty much shut down the market for any rivals, creating that exact same flywheel and cementing Google's dominance for the next generation of tech. And it doesn't stop there. There's another layer to this whole thing. The deal isn't just about the AI models, it's also about cloud computing. Training these gigantic AI systems takes a truly staggering amount of computer power. By tying its AI future to Google's cloud, Apple is also reinforcing the power of this tiny handful of companies that control all this critical infrastructure. It creates yet another bottleneck where it's almost impossible for anyone new to compete. This whole Apple-Google deal, it's not happening in a vacuum. It's actually a huge symptom of a much bigger shift that's going on across the entire tech market. For the first time in a while, investors are starting to look beyond just the handful of biggest names in tech. So analysts over at Morgan Stanley are saying the whole mood has changed. For the last couple of years, the big story was all about who was spending the most money on AI. Now the market is demanding proof. Investors want to see that these massive multi-billion-dollar bets are actually going to lead to real sustainable profits. The hype phase, It's over. The show me the money phase has officially begun. And you can actually see this playing out in the data. Just look at this chart. So far in 2026, the equal weight S&P 500 is doing better than the standard cap-weighted one. So what does that mean in plain English? It means the market's rally is spreading out. It's not just a few tech megacaps pulling everything up anymore. Money is starting to flow into a much broader range of companies. The big takeaway here is that investors are getting way more picky. They're looking at the big three, Apple, Microsoft, and Google, and they're really starting to weigh their different business models. I mean, just look at their PE ratios here, a simple way to see how expensive a stock is. Apple has its amazing consumer ecosystem, but it's always at risk from hardware cycles. Microsoft has that super stable enterprise business, but it's in a brutal fight for cloud supremacy. And then you have Google, which has all this incredible AI potential, but its stock is seen as cheaper because of that huge regulatory risk we've been talking about. And what this all boils down to is this new split in the market. Investors are starting to rotate their money away from the AI builders, the companies spending billions creating the core technology, and toward the AI adopters. These are companies in all sorts of other sectors like healthcare, energy, or finance that are using AI right now to get more efficient, to cut costs, and to deliver actual profits today. Okay, so let's put all the pieces together. What does this actually mean for you and me? All the players are on the board now. You've got a tech giant facing this huge innovation challenge, a massive partnership that's under regulatory fire, and a market that is totally changing its mind about what success in AI even looks like. All right, so let's just recap the big takeaways here. First, this AI transition is so hard that even a behemoth like Apple had to turn to a rival for help. Second, these giant partnerships are opening up a whole new front in the antitrust wars, and that could have real consequences for competition. Third, the market has totally shifted. It's not about AI hype anymore, it is about AI profits. And finally, the outcome of this whole battle between the builders, the adopters, and the regulators is going to define the technology that we all use every single day. In all of this, it leads us to one final massive question. For years, Apple proved that owning the hardware, the device right there in your hand, was the ultimate source of power. But this new era of AI, which is all powered by these giant data centers in the cloud, it challenges that entire idea. So who is going to own the next decade of technology? The company that makes the device or the company that runs the intelligence behind it? That is the trillion-dollar question.